get hugged, everybody get loved on. It's a very important thing that happens here, the take a hug, give a hug portion of the day. Well, a couple weeks ago, we finished 1 John. Look at us go, completing something. I was going to start procrastinating a little bit, but I'm going to wait on that for a while. So, yeah, I think so. Amazing. And then last week was Crazy Naked Guy. If you missed that, that was our Independence Day message at Pinecrest. It's online if you want to see about Crazy Naked Guy. That's what always comes to my mind when I think Independence Day. And it'll make sense if you watch it. It was kind of a neat day. It was neat up there. Good to be back. We lost some shade trees, didn't we, Dave? Homeboy was in the direct sunlight. It's like, what's that sound? I hear bacon cooking. Oh, no, it's just me in the sun at 6,000 feet of elevation. So today, and going forward for the next indeterminate amount of time, we'll just take however long it takes, because that's what we do. We're going to take a left turn. We're going to go into the Old Testament today. Some of you were privy to that. Some of you weren't. The book of Nehemiah. We're going to take a look at the book of Nehemiah. So you can open there if you have your Bible. Don't feel bad if you can't find it right away. It's hard to find. If you're thumbing back and forth looking for it for a minute, don't worry about it. We're not going to judge you. I, as your pastor, it had been so long since I'd been back in the book of Nehemiah. I'm like, where is it? Did they take it out when I wasn't looking? Oh, there it is. Okay. Took me a minute to find it. It's between Ezra and Esther. The easiest way to find it is go to Job. That's your closest big book, right? Your closest big landmark. And then go 2 books to the left toward the front cover. And you'll end up at the book of Nehemiah. This is the last of the Old Testament history books. And it's interesting that as you look at this story and you look at the secular history of the Persians and the people around the area, the history lines up very seamlessly between the Bible and what goes on there. So it's fairly accurate. It's a good telling of, it's very accurate actually. It's a good telling of everything that was going on at that time. The book of Nehemiah takes place, just to give you a frame of reference here, 1,000 years after Moses and 400 years before Jesus. And so that would make, like a long time ago to us. That's a very long time ago. So that kind of gives you a frame of reference about where that's at in the historical timeline. Takes place about 15 years after the end of the book of Ezra. And this is at the end of the Babylonian captivity. Now, not everybody has been around and is steeped in biblical history and knows what the Babylonian captivity is. But we'll break that down a little bit going in here. So much of the Old Testament dovetails and centers around this Babylonian captivity. This time of exile for the Jewish people, when they were actually removed from their land, when they were sent off somewhere else. And there's like so much of the Bible. I mean, this is a very pivotal time. I don't know if you've ever been in a place where it's like, no, God, I know what you're asking me to do. I know what your will is, what you want for my life. I'm determined I'm going to do my own thing because I think it's better. And sometimes it's like, okay, have at it. Give it a try. That's kind of what had happened with Israel. During this exile, and God warned him about it. He's like, this is coming. You guys don't straighten out. You like your idols. You like doing the wrong thing. I'll take you someplace where that's like regular life, right? I'll let you be brought out of your land, dropped into somewhere else where worshiping pagan gods is everyday life. And we'll see how you like it there. We'll see how you like that scenario. Just going to give you what you're asking for. And so he lets them go. They're captured, conquered, overrun by the Babylonians. They were very close to the Babylonians, but the Babylonians weren't actually in our story. So they were captured, they were conquered by the Babylonians. They were brought out of their land. They were taken to Babylon, this other city, this capital city. They were removed from Israel. The city, the temple, the walls in Israel were torn apart, were taken down to the ground. Right, it was just completely destroyed. They were taken from Israel to Babylon, which is in what is now modern-day Iraq. if you want to kind of get a frame of reference of where that's at. And the distance, it was similar. Like, imagine somebody comes here. It's like, we're so-and-so. We're the Babylonians. And we're going to conquer Tuolumne County. And so we're going to wreck your Walmart. We're going to wreck your Lowe's. We're going to tear down. We're going to burn up your churches. And we're going to tear your houses down. And we're going to take you from Tuolumne County to Babylon, I guess. It'd be like, kind of like being taken from here and taken on a march to Seattle. It's about the same distance. That's terrible, huh? That doesn't sound like they didn't have minivans. They didn't even have bicycles. They were like, all right, we're going. Put on your hiking shoes because we're going for a little through hike to Babylon, like going to Seattle. That's a long way. That was a challenge. I'm sure there were people that didn't make it. I'm sure it was not comfortable. It was not fun. They weren't glamping. They were prisoners of war, basically. And they were being taken, this 800-mile trek to Babylon to live there now, while their city was just in ruins. That couldn't have felt good. This is the promised land. This is the temple, their center of worship was there. God promised them this place. And it's like, well, you guys are messing up. I will give you what you want. I'll let you go, and you can try that out for a while. Another equally big challenge to all this is that once they got there, Babylon was actually pretty nice in some ways. They had the Hanging Gardens, one of the 8 wonders of the ancient world. We're in Babylon. There was culture. There was, some good stuff there as well. There were advances in math and advances in science that came out of this culture. And part of the strategy was to while they were there, take the young leaders from Israel and assimilate them into Babylonian culture. You see that in Daniel, where it's like he's working, he's got a good job. He's got a good job in the palace, and he's getting to eat the good food, and he's offered the good food anyway. He did not take it. There's like a prestige. They're like raising up leaders, trying to assimilate them into the Babylonian culture rather than the Israelite culture. So for those who were faithful, well, there's a challenge. There's good stuff to be had. You can be more comfortable. You can have a better time, but to be faithful to God is going to be kind of dangerous and difficult at this time. And there's so much good stuff out there. Your life could be much more plush and much more easy by assimilating into the Babylonian culture. So it was a time that wasn't all that fun, but it was formative for Israel. Man, they learned some stuff through that. You learn stuff when you're pulling away from God and he's like, okay, sometimes I'm like a little toddler in the grocery store, just pulling on Dad's arm, throwing my little tantrum, and he just lets go of my hand and, let you fall. It says, I give you what you want, and then you look at him all surprised, you let me go. And so, God had done that. It's a formative time as they learned through this experience. Isaiah, Lamentations, Psalms, Daniel, Esther, Ezra, and other books, and now Nehemiah, all touch and center around this time, right? They all, dovetail around this. There's so much to learn through this. And the faithfulness of the people in these rough circumstances, those that remained faithful, that did the right thing, the faithfulness of those people gave us some great biblical heroes that we can learn from. So Babylon, empires come and go, right? Empires rise, empires fall. If you studied civilization, you know that nature abhors a vacuum, they say, which means if you have something with nothing in it, nature doesn't like that. It will try and, like if you make a vacuum, nature's going to try and fill that vacuum with gas and matter, and nature abhors a vacuum. Power abhors a vacuum as well. So when one empire rises and collapses, goes down, there's always something there to take its place, something else to move in. So we had the Assyrian Empire that rose and went away. The Babylonian Empire rose, went away. And then the Medo-Persian Empire rose and went away. The Greeks, the Romans, and the empires just kind of do this through time. There's always something that raises up, it collapses, something else takes its place. So we're here now after the Babylonian Empire. Babylon has collapsed. The Medo-Persian Empire has kind of risen up to take its place. when these transitions take place, they're always surrounded by violence and greed. You look at the Romans, like the Caesars, when Augustus Caesar is like, yep, I'm God, and y'all gonna worship me. And when Caesar became a god, and there was that at stake, every time, these people were like killing each other off. They were poisoning each other, stabbing each other, throwing each other under the bus, trying to get to that position of power. Where, man, I want to be a god. I want to be Caesar. There's like so much violence and corruption and yuck that surrounds these transitions in empire. So much power grabbing. So the empire deck had been reshuffling around the Israelites, right? Bring the deck out, and things are being reshuffled. Now, God told them that they would be exiled for 70 years, and now at the end of that, things are changing. Things are changing culturally. Things are changing empire-wise. Babylon was gone, and there was a new sheriff in town, right? The Medo-Persian Empire. That must have been exciting and scary for them, because it's like, all right, well, here it comes. Maybe this is our, God promised, this is our chance. Is it going to work out like that? Are these guys going to be worse than the Babylonians? Is, God going to actually get us out of here and send us back? They're just like waiting. There's a tension, an anxiety, and anticipation in all this as things are changing. So as we go through Nehemiah, this is all written in the first person. They think that Nehemiah wrote his memoirs, and Elvis. Yeah, no, not Elvis. Ezra, very different from Elvis and Eltra, whoever that is. Ezra helped him compile those into this book. So it's a first-hand account of what happened. Some things about Nehemiah that we will look at and look for as we study this book here. There's a few of them, a few traits, a few things about Nehemiah I want you to keep an eye on as we study this book. Number one, he is a doer. He's not a talker. He's not a complainer. He's not an armchair quarterback. Those guys, like after the big game on Monday, what they should have done, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, if you know that, how come you ought to get a job coaching the team, Sound engineering is exactly like that. Everybody is a sound engineer. Be sitting back there doing sound, they'll come up and, hey, does it have to be this loud? Yes, it has to be this loud. It's a loud, it's a rock band. What do you expect? It's got to be this loud. The guitar's a little loud. Yeah, it's because I told him to turn down and he turned back up. It's like everybody wants to be a sound man. And so Nehemiah is not that. He's not the wannabe guy. He's the doer. He's the guy that's going to get behind the console and actually mix the show. He's the guy that's going to coach the team. Not someone you'd probably complain to. You have those people in your life where sometimes all you want to do is complain and have people say, oh, yes, poor you. Oh, I feel for you. I feel bad, that you're going through. You got those people. Then you have the people that you just don't go complain to because they're going to say, well, what are you doing about it? I'm married to one of those. I start griping and she's like, well, you teach people how to treat you, and what are you doing to change the situation? I go to her for, man, she gives me common sense, gets me back on track, gets me to be a doer instead of a complainer. And Nehemiah was not one of those guys you would go complaining to if you were looking for sympathy. So that's the first thing. He's a doer. Second, he is a prayer. He's praying all through this book. Now, it's not always these epic, well-organized, long oratories of prayer. He's going to start with one of those in this chapter. But sometimes it's just like these little blurbs, these little one-liners when he's in the middle of something. It's like, but he's always got that mindset of being in communication with God. Whether it's a long prayer, a little prayer, he's in the middle of something and it's like, man, this is kind of risky. God help me. He's just throwing down these little one-liners just to keep in contact with God. He is a prayer. So keep an eye on what he prays through this book as well as how he prays. Now we're coming off of 1 John, and 1 John was talking about praying confidently, which means we saw fearlessly, honestly, even bluntly, just coming to God with what you are and what you've done and the way things are and just talking to him about it. Not holding back and candy coating things. It's just coming confidently, fearlessly to God and talking to him. Nehemiah was doing this 400 years prior. So So he is a doer, he is a prayer, and he is a sticker. I know these are like not grammatically English, good terms, but I want you to remember this. He's a sticker. And what do you think of when a sticker? It's like we put on our Yeti bottle, right? Like, I like this outfit. I'm going to put that sticker on my Yeti bottle. I had a sticker of Bigfoot on my car for the longest time. It's my sticker. You put it on there and it sticks and it stays and it's there. He was like that. He sticks. He was adaptable. He was tenacious. He wasn't one to give up once he started something, especially if he knew that this is what God wants for us to do. And he wasn't going to be dissuaded. He wasn't going to be turned away. He was going to stick to that. He had a faithfulness and integrity when he was doing what God wanted him to do. And he wasn't talked down from it, and he wasn't talked out of it. So these are some good qualities, right? You like this guy so far? Unless you're going to go complain to him, I wouldn't do that. He'll just tell you what are you doing? What you need to do. Not sit here and gripe about it and talk about it and throw other people under the bus and point fingers. What are you doing? What are you doing? So Nehemiah, chapter 1, verse 1. Here we go, folks. Got all the background, the lowdown kind of on what's going on. The words of Nehemiah, son of Hakaliah. Now, these names are funky. I would like to name, if I had another kid, I would name him Nehemiah, because we could just call him Neh for short. Hey, son, you want to tell me your name? Nah. Anyway. Oh, dad jokes. In the month of Kislev, in the 20th year, while I was in the citadel of Susa, Hanani, one of my brothers, came from Judah with some other men, and I questioned them about the Jewish remnant that had survived the exile, and also about Jerusalem. All this probably means nothing to you at this point. What is a Kislev? What is a Susa? Hanani, I don't know what any of this stuff is. So Kislev, in the month of Kislev, and they kept months and time a little differently than we do. This is a Hebrew month that included November and December. So it's like the middle of winter, the dead of winter, the darkest months, the coldest months. And, when we get to that winter solstice, and we got so much sunlight now. I was sitting there last night at like 9 o'clock. We're out on the deck, and I'm like, man, it's still kind of light. A few months, this will be like 5 o'clock. Sun's gone down, the last twilight. And when you get to that darkest part of the year, that winter solstice, when everything bottoms out, all the leaves are gone, it's cold, everything's gone dormant, and it's the darkest it's going to get, and that's where that corner turns and you start regenerating. You start turning the corner and moving towards spring. You start getting more light. Life starts coming back, and that's kind of where they were seasonally. And interestingly, that's kind of where they were culturally and spiritually, I think, as well. They've gotten as bad as it's going to get. The corner's going to turn. So they're in these winter months, prior to the renewal happening, in the citadel of Susa, which is a fortified city. This was, Babylon was where the Babylonian Empire was. Susa was now the seat of government, the seat of empire. In the 20th year of what? Probably the 20th year of the reign of King Artaxerxes I, who was the son of Esther and Ahasuerus. These names, all right, now it's bad enough just to try and be able to say the names, but then the same guy will have different names depending on who's writing, right? So, Xerxes was the Persian. They call him Ahasuerus, and, in Hebrew, these guys have different names. There's like more than one Artaxerxes. There's, 1 and 2. It gets really confusing. We're not going to complicate things by camping on that too much. But 20th year, the reign of the son of Esther, and that's a good story too. Maybe we'll go do that one day. So then he's there, Nehemiah's there, and Hanani comes, his brother comes along. And it's not just like, hey, I was in the neighborhood, thought I'd stop by. It's like, hey, I accidentally walked from Sonora to Phoenix, plus a few miles. And, here I am. I just figured I'd stop by and say hello. This was an intentional trip. It was a tough trip. And so I don't know what the reason was for them going, but, maybe just want to go see his brother, visit. So goes and visits him. Nehemiah questions his brother and the guys with him about the survivors back in Israel. Now, man, there's a difference between surviving and thriving sometimes, isn't there? When you can say you survived something, it doesn't mean necessarily you're in great shape. It means you're still here, right? Survivors of something usually have a long road ahead of them of recovery and adaptation and hopefully finding a way to thrive again. So he asked them about the survivors back in Israel. How's it going? What's it like there? How are the people? How's the temple? What's it look like these days? And what did they have to say? Verse 3. They said to me, those who survive the exile and are back in the province are in great trouble and disgrace. The wall of Jerusalem is broken down, and its gates have been burned with fire. The wall is broken down, and the gates, they're all burned up. Rubble and ashes are all that's left around the perimeter of this place. So I'm going to let you know that chapters 1 through 7 are about building the wall. That is such a politically charged thing to say right now, isn't it? That idea of building a wall. You got to say that, and people start, there's a division about people that, When we studied this with George like 10 years ago, that wasn't a thing yet. That didn't come to mind. So this is a politically charged thing to build a wall. That sure starts a division among people. And I'll let you, as we go through and study this, I'll let you take that where you want to politically. I'm not going to take it there. I'm going to teach the Bible as presented. And he was there. He was going to rebuild that wall around the city. So by the time we're done, I think you'll see why actually rebuilding the wall was important. And you'll see the miracle and how they got it done and how fast they got it done. So I want to talk about walls for a minute. Walls are important, right? Whether you believe in that border wall or not, whether, you believe in open borders or closed borders, I'm going to leave that up to you. But walls are important. Borders are important. I'm sure we all live. Do we all live in structures with walls? Everybody? Who lives in a structure with walls? Right. And if you don't, you know the trouble that comes with not having walls where you live. A house without walls is called cowboy camping. And it's not as fun, it's not as glamorous as the magazines and websites make it look. REI, boy, they'd send me emails. And it's like, look at these hipster people with their $700 sleeping bags sleeping on the ground. They're sitting there. They look happy. They got their expensive little, Petzl headlamps on. They're in these beautiful places. No, it's not all that. Cowboy camping is not glamorous. It's not as fun as they make it look. It's a lie. The bugs alone are a good reason to at least put a tent around you. I don't know if you've ever been cowboy camping or outside and you feel something crawl up you, but you can't see what it is. Nobody's sleeping the rest of the night now. I'm going to feel, even if nothing's there, I'm going to feel all kinds of stuff crawling on me because something, I didn't know what it was. There are mosquitoes. There are scorpions. There are centipedes and millipedes and carpenter ants. And there's all kinds of stuff to crawl up on you. Not glamorous. And can you imagine your house with no walls? I can't. My house, all right, with no walls. Okay, we got a floor maybe, and it's like the neighbors would be like, "He is in the shower again." Ain't nobody want to see that, Their walls are there for a good reason. Walls are important. Or maybe you come home and be like, "Well, somebody stole the TV again. Should we go get another one?" I don't know. They're just going to steal that one too. Maybe we'll just live without it now. Or come home. It's like, "Honey, the neighbor's dog came in and ate our food and pooped in the living room again." Or you might come home one day and like other people are living there. It's like, "Who are you?" "Oh, we saw this place. We kind of thought it was cool, so we're going to live here now." You're going to live here with us? Or are you throwing us out? It'd be kind of awkward. Or someone wants to come into you great harm. There's one less barrier for them to get to you without walls around your house. Israel had enemies all around them. They still do. had enemies all around them. And there was nothing at this point to keep their enemies from walking right into their capital city, right into their center of government, right into their center of worship, doing what they wanted and taking what they wanted. People had tried to rebuild the walls, but they didn't get far. It's like all these, they're surrounded by all these enemies, and they start building something, and these guys come along, like if you're building a little sand castle at the beach, and the bully comes along and poof, knocks down your sand castle. It's like, and that's kind of what they were doing to him. Every time they start something, bullies would come along, poof, knock their stuff over. And then the empire's government got in the way, and they did a stop work order in Ezra chapter 4. It's like, so you guys are doing this. We think you guys are insurrectionists, and you're going to stop. We will make you stop what you're doing. So, yeah, the walls were important. You can kind of see why they wanted to get those rebuilt. Walls are important and useful, but you also need to have wisdom on when and where to put walls up or when and where not put walls up. There's a wisdom that goes with that as well. We are the church without. Here, Sierra Adventure Church, one of the things we are without is walls. We don't have a building. We don't have walls. Now, that being said, if you come here tonight, my guitar is not going to be there. And the sound system's not going to be here. If I left that stuff here, people might come and help themselves to it. I know that's the way people are sometimes. They might come and vandalize it. Sometimes people don't want to steal it. They just come and wreck it. Come and graffiti it or, punch the little grills in on my speakers or, bust my guitar like Pete Townsend from The Who. They might just vandalize it. It might get rained on. Could come back next week, there'd be wood rats nesting in my guitar. Or wasps. That wouldn't be good. No, we don't want that. So, when we're done here, I take all this stuff home, put it in the Subaru, we take it home, and I put it in my walls. Because, I want to know where it's at, I want it in functional condition, and I don't want other people stealing it. Good example of a wall, we gotta have wisdom on when and where to put walls. I could build a wall right here so you couldn't see me. Would that be, some of you might be like, yes, that would be a very good thing to do, especially if you're going to be taking a shower or something, But, I want to see you guys, so I'm not going to build a wall right here. We need to know when and where we should build these walls. Another good example of where there was a wall that the time came for there not to be a wall was the temple veil. In the Jewish temple, you had the outer courts, you had the holy place, and the most holy place. The high priest got to go in there once a year, and it was a deal for him. He had to be ritually clean. He had to have his spiritual life in order together, or else he would not come out when he went in. And so they had this temple veil, big old thick piece of woven cloth, super heavy, and so that it was dark and nobody could go in, just like go wandering in there, because you wouldn't want to do that. It would, your life would be in peril at that point, being in the very presence of God. So the high priest, they would take him that once a year, they'd tie a rope on him, put some bells on him, so he'd be like ching-a-linging in there, and if they heard the ching-a-linging stop, they knew he was in trouble, that he did not have his spiritual life in order, and so they would drag his carcass out, because we're not going in there to get him, So they'd pull him out by the rope if something bad happened. When Jesus died, when Jesus said, "It is finished," that temple veil was torn from top to bottom. It was a wall. And now Jesus is like, oh, no. It is finished. It is done. I have paid the price. I have made it so that you can come directly and have that fellowship with God. We don't need that anymore. All right? I have got spiritual life in order for you. I've covered you. I've atoned for you so that you can have that direct access to God. So, whoa, from top to bottom. And you know what they did? They fixed it. They sewed it back up. Bummer. So there was a wall that had a function in a place, and then the time came where that wall didn't exist. You need to have the wisdom to know when to leave the wall, when to take the wall down, when to build it, when to not, where and when. So that's about as far as we're going to get today. Let's think about walls this week. That was deep. That was complicated as I started thinking about, well, where do we build the walls? Where do we not build the walls? There's an amount of wisdom and thought that goes into that. Consider where walls are and aren't appropriate. Think about the walls and the boundaries in our own lives. Do we have people walled out of our lives that we should probably let in? Do Do we have people in our lives that we should probably wall out? I mean, this is complicated. This is stuff to think about, something to wrestle with. So I'm going to turn you guys loose and let you wrestle with that. If you're looking for something to talk about over lunch, talk about walls. Talk about where they're appropriate, where they're inappropriate. Try and figure some stuff out on that. As we go forward in our study of Nehemiah, we're going to see times when Nehemiah could have made some walls with people in his life, but because he didn't, he was able to get those walls in Israel built. Right? It might have seemed like the right thing to shut some people out of his life, but because he didn't, those avenues opened up. So it's, we have to have wisdom on that. So next week we're going to look at Nehemiah's reaction to the news back in Israel. It's like, it's bad. You remember that Huey Lewis song, Sometimes Bad is Bad? Across the street, there's a neon sign, all you could eat for $1.99. I'm going to try and test myself here on the lyrics. That stew was some of the baddest in the land, and dollars worth was all that I could stand. Sometimes bad is bad. And then in the Hebrew, when it says that, yeah, things are bad, it means, yes, bad. Sometimes bad is bad. Things are worse than bad for them. And so we're gonna look at Nehemiah's reaction when he gets that news. Keep in mind that he is a doer, he is a prayer, he is a sticker. And watch that unfold. With that in mind, watch how he handles the situation and what he does next. So come back next week. Watch online if you're not going to be here. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a fun book. So, Lord, we thank you for the day. We thank you for your word. Just pray, Lord, that as we wrestle with this, there's no easy answers on where and when to make walls or where and when to take walls down. Lord, give us wisdom on that, to know when it's a good time for a boundary, when it's a good time to take that out of the way. And sometimes those things change with time and circumstances. And Lord, the time was there, the time was right for this wall in Israel to get built so that they could resume worship in safety and, keeping the outside, keeping the world out, and having determination over their own worship and their own land and their own government. And we just pray that as we look all the way back in time at this situation, Lord, that you would show us things in our lives, that you would make it real to us, and help us to, be doers, prayers, and stickers in the things that you are calling us to as well. And Lord, I pray that as we go today, that you keep us safe. Let these words rattle around in our hearts and minds as we go. Help us to wrestle with wisdom with some of these things we've seen today, and we thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.